My name is Alex Sterling. I'm 37, and I live in Seattle. Here, the persistent rain often feels like it's trying to wash away the city's secrets, just as I've spent a lifetime trying to wash away a past filled with its own ghosts. I'm a real estate developer now, the founder of a company I built from the ground up, with my own two hands. But to understand the man I am today, you have to understand the boy I was in a small Ohio town called Maple Creek, a place of sun-drenched memories and bitter shadows that shaped me in ways I'm still discovering. Maple Creek in the 1990s was the kind of town you read about in books, with wide, tree-lined streets and houses with welcoming front porches where neighbors actually spoke to one another. Our family lived in a sprawling Victorian home on Willow Lane, a place whose very walls seemed to echo with the effortless laughter and unconditional warmth of my mother, Lena. She was the true center of my universe, a woman with a gentle touch and a smile that could make you believe in everyday magic. She taught me to see shapes in the clouds, to listen to the stories the wind told through the leaves, and to believe that even on the darkest days, there was a promise of a sunrise. I can still smell the cinnamon from the apple pies we'd bake in our sunlit kitchen. Her voice a soft melody as she told me stories of faraway lands, stories that felt more real than reality itself. My father, Robert Sterling, was the founder of Sterling Properties, a titan in the local real estate world. He was a good man, but a distant one. His love often expressed through his work ethic rather than his words. His work often took him away, but his homecomings were events. He'd return with small treasures for me, a model airplane from a city he'd visited, a leather-bound book of adventures, and a hug that felt like a fortress, making me feel cherished and safe in his powerful embrace. But that fortress crumbled when I was 8 years old. My mother was diagnosed with a vicious form of cancer, a cruel disease that stole her from us in less than a year. I vividly remember the sterile white hospital room, her vibrant eyes growing dim, yet still trying to offer me a reassuring smile. "Alex, you have to promise me you'll be a good, strong man," she whispered, her hand cool in mine. "I'll always be watching over you, my love. Don't ever forget that." Those were her final words to me. My mother's funeral is a blur, a collection of disconnected, muted images. The dark suits of strangers, the rain tapping on the roof of the car, and a profound, suffocating emptiness that felt as if the world had lost its color. My father, a man I had always seen as unbreakable, held me close that day, his own shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I didn't know it would be the last time I would feel that kind of unguarded warmth from him. After my mother's death, my father retreated into a fortress of his own, his work. He used it as a shield against his grief, leaving me to wander the grand, cold rooms of our house alone. I became a shadow in my own home, seeking comfort in the remnants of my mother's life. A faded silk scarf that still held her scent, a journal filled with her elegant script, a pressed flower tucked inside her favorite book of poetry. Then, when I was 10, my father brought Isabel home. She was a strikingly beautiful woman with perfectly coiffed hair and eyes that were sharp and assessing, missing nothing. She arrived with her 2 children, Chloe and Evan, and it felt less like a new family forming and more like a hostile takeover. My father, lost in his own sorrow, saw Isabel as a lifeline, a new beginning. I saw her as an erasure of my mother. Isabel's mastery was in her manipulation of my father's grief. She positioned herself not just as his new partner, but as his savior. "Robert, darling," I'd hear her say in her soft, persuasive voice, "you need to focus on healing. Looking at Alex, it must be so painful for you. He looks so much like her. Let me handle him. Let me help you move forward." She convinced him that his avoidance of me was a necessary part of his grieving process. Reframing his neglect as a form of self-preservation she was there to facilitate. Her children took their cues from her. Chloe, 2 years my senior, was condescending, her smile a weapon. Evan, a year my junior, was her enforcer, aggressive and taking obvious pleasure in my misery. He would break my model airplanes, hide my books, and trip me in the hallway. When I'd react, Isabel would swoop in, her face a mask of disappointment. "Alex, you must learn to share. Evan is your brother now," she'd admonish, making me the villain in a story she had written. I tried to talk to my father, but Isabel was always there, intercepting, explaining my outbursts as a sign of me not adjusting well. "He just needs time, Robert," she'd coo, and my father, desperate for peace, would retreat back into his work, leaving me to fend for myself. The following years were a masterclass in quiet endurance. I found my sanctuary in my mother's journal. Her words became my armor. "My dear Alex," she wrote, "you are my greatest masterpiece. Your heart is kind and your mind is bright. Never let anyone convince you otherwise." I read those lines until they were etched into my soul. I promised her and myself that I would not be broken. My escape came in the form of an acceptance letter from a university in Seattle. It was a beacon of hope in a dark tunnel. The night before I left, I looked at myself in the mirror. I was no longer a boy crying over broken toys. I was taller, stronger, but the shadows of the past still clung to me. I vowed they would not define my future. I arrived in Seattle with a scholarship, a few $100s from a summer job, and my mother's journal. I worked tables at a diner to cover rent, balancing late-night shifts with a demanding business degree. College was where I slowly learned to be a person in the world again. I made friends, including a kind, fiery art history student named Clara. She was the first person to see past the walls I had built. "You're so guarded, Alex," she told me one day over coffee. "It's like you're waiting for something to go wrong." Her directness was jarring, but it was also refreshing. She listened to my dreams of building not just luxury condos, but communities, affordable, sustainable places where people could feel safe and valued. With her, for the first time in years, I didn't feel so alone. My father's calls were infrequent and strained, always with Isabel's faint voice in the background. I never told them how much I was struggling. I was determined to make it on my own. Just weeks after I graduated, my carefully constructed new life was interrupted. My father called, his voice heavy with a strange urgency. "Alex, I need you to come home. Sterling Properties needs you. It's your legacy." Every instinct screamed at me to say no, to protect the peace I had fought so hard to find. But a deeper, more complicated part of me, the part that still saw him as the father who built fortresses with his hugs, agreed. I returned to Maple Creek and walked back into the cold, familiar house on Willow Lane. Working at Sterling Properties was a nightmare. Isabel and Evan had cemented their power. They assigned me to a dead-end project, a clear attempt to make me fail. I fought back. I spent my nights developing an alternative plan for a blighted industrial area, a mixed-use community with affordable housing, green spaces, and small business incubators. It was ambitious, it was sustainable, and it was the very soul of what Sterling Properties used to be. I presented it at a major board meeting. I poured my heart and soul into that presentation, using data, designs, and a passion I didn't know I possessed. For a moment, I saw a flicker of pride in my father's eyes. But then Isabel spoke. She calmly and methodically dismantled my proposal with talk of unacceptable risk and underwhelming profit margins, then presented their own plan, a luxury golf course. The board feels Evan's proposal is a more financially sound direction for the company, Alex, my father said, his voice flat, his eyes not meeting mine. You're being too idealistic. That was the final blow. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I simply gathered my papers, looked at my father one last time and said, I hope it makes you very rich. I walked out of that meeting, out of that building, and out of their lives. That night, I packed a bag and drove away from Maple Creek for the last time. I returned to Seattle and built my own world. I founded my own development firm, North Star Communities, and dedicated it to the principles I believed in. And I succeeded, beyond my wildest dreams. Then, one rainy Seattle morning, the past found me. The call from my father's private nurse, the news of his death, the urgent plea to return. The funeral was a surreal play. Isabel, Chloe, and Evan were the stars, performing their grief for the town. When I arrived, Isabel confronted me. I know this is hard, but we need to discuss the will, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Robert left everything to us, of course. He knew who was truly loyal to him. Before I could respond, the nurse appeared at my side. She discreetly pressed a thick envelope into my hand. Read this somewhere private, she whispered. It's what he really wanted. Later that night, in a sterile hotel room, I opened it. Inside was a long, handwritten letter from my father and a different, notarized will, dated just weeks before his death. Alex, my son, it began. If you are reading this, then I have failed to tell you the truth in person. Forgive me. I have been a coward, trapped in a prison of my own grief. Isabel used my sorrow against me, isolating me from you, feeding me lies that you had abandoned me. She and Evan pressured me into signing a will that cut you out, all while planning to sell the company's core assets to a competitor. I discovered their deception too late. This new will is my real final wish. Everything, the house, the company, our legacy is yours. You are the only one I trust to protect it. Please forgive a foolish, broken old man. The envelope also contained a small audio recorder with a recording of Isabel finalizing the illegal sale. The truth was a physical blow, a mix of vindication and profound sorrow. He hadn't abandoned me. He had been a prisoner. The next day, armed with the truth, I confronted them with my father's old, trusted lawyer. In a quiet law office, their world came crashing down. The fake will was exposed. The evidence was irrefutable. I gave them a choice: disappear from Maple Creek forever, or face federal fraud charges. They took the deal and vanished. I didn't do it for the money. I did it for him. Today, Sterling Properties is thriving again, building communities. The old house on Willow Lane is now the Lena Sterling Community Center, filled with the laughter of children. It's a legacy my mother would have loved. I've learned that a true inheritance isn't about property. It's about the values passed down to you. My mother taught me kindness. My father, in his final act, taught me about truth and justice. And the past, I've discovered, isn't something you run from. It's something you face, you understand, and you build upon to create a better future.